We continue now at the top of Daf Ayin Hey Amid Beis Meseches Avodah Zara. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 75b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara was discussing baskets and strainers. How do you kasher them? And the Gemara now says that tzavsa, if they're plated with tzavsa, so then minagvan, then you have to cleanse them. Rashi explains that tzavsa is min gemi, it's a kind of a reed. And the Gemara continues, the kisna, if they're plated with flax, miyashnon, you leave them dormant, vi isbu kitri, and if they have knots, shari luhu, you untie them. And the Gemara continues, itmar, it was stated, am ha'aretz shehoshid yado lagas, if an am ha'aretz stretches his hand out to a wine press, and the assumption is an am ha'aretz is not careful when it comes to tumah, v'naga be'eshkolos, and he touches the clusters of grapes in the wine press, Rebbe v'Rebbe Chia, that's a machlokus between Rebbe and Rebbe Chia. Chad amar eshkol v'chol sevivosav tamei, and one says the cluster of grapes and everything around it is tamei, v'chol hagas kula tahor, but the rest of the wine press is tahor, it's pure. V'chad amar, and the other opinion says, kol hagas kula nami tamei, the entire wine press is considered to be tamei, it's considered to be impure. And the Gemara asks, Ulamando Amar Eshkol v'chol sevivosav tameim v'chol hagas kula tahor, according to the one who says that the cluster of grapes and everything around it is tamei, but the rest of the wine press is tar, is pure. What's the difference between this and that which we learned in the Mishnah in Meseches Taharos? The Mishnah says, Sheretz shenimtza barichayim, if you have a sheretz, a creeping creature that is found in the mill, this is the mill, that they grind up the olives before they bring them to the olive press, Eino mitame elamakom mago, it only makes the area where it touches tamei. Vim haya mashkin mahalich, but if there is liquid that is flowing, hakol tamei, so then everything is tamei. And so we should say the same thing over here. We should say that since there's liquid in the wine press that is flowing, therefore everything should be tamei. And the Gemara continues and answers, Hasam over there, lo mifsak v'lo midi, by the olive press or by the mill, there's nothing that's interrupting, there's nothing that's stopping the flow of the liquid. But over here, mifsaki ashkolos, here, the clusters, they are like an interruption, they cause the liquid to stop flowing, and so therefore we say that the entire thing is not tamei. And Rashi explains, V'naga ba'ashkolos v'hein mutalos b'yayin. The clusters of grapes are in the wine. Barechayim is the mill, shetochnen bohem zeisim. They would grind up the olives there, kodem nesinas on the bad, before bringing them to the olive press. V'yachargach nosan bebad v'toin b'kora. Then they would bring it to the olive press, and the beam would be pressed down upon them. And lo mifsak midi, there's nothing interrupting. Shahamashke mechabron. The liquid makes everything connected. Uv'zeisim ein ashkolos, and the zeisim, when you're pressing olives, there are no clusters, so there's nothing that is going to cause that kind of an interruption. And the Gemara continues, Orule Rabbanan Rabbi Yirmiyah, the Rabbanan, they issued a ruling to Rabbi Yirmiyah, V'amrila, and some say Livrei de Rabbi Yirmiyah, to the son of Rabbi Yirmiyah, Kedivrei ha'omer, in accordance with the one who says, Eshkol v'chol sevivosav tamein, the cluster and everything around it is tamei, v'chol hagas kula tahora, but the entire wine press, the rest of the wine press is tahor, is pure. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Halokeach klei tashmish min ovdei kochavim, one who buys utensils from ovdei kochavim, from idolaters. This is talking about buying cooking utensils from non-Jews. So the Mishnah is dealing with how to kasher those utensils. As shadarko lahatvil, if it's a utensil that is normally immersed, yatvil, so then you immerse it, that's talking about immersing it in a mikvah. Lahagil, if it's a utensil that is used with boiling hot water, yagil, the way you kasher it is with boiling hot water. L'labin ba'or, if it's with white hot fire, yilabin ba'or, then you should kasher it with white hot fire. Hashafud, the spit, v'asaklin, the grill, milabnan ba'or, those you should use white hot fire. And hasak, in the knife, shafa, so you rub it against the sharpening stone, v'hi tahora, and that makes it pure, that makes it kosher. Rashi explains that shadarko lahatbil means, kolomar means to say as follows, kli haroi li tahir b'tvila, if it is a vessel which is fit to purify it by immersing it in a mikveh, ein sarach tikun acher, you don't need to do anything else. The idea is kagon klisha tashmish al yedei tzon, and the Mishnah simply means, if you have a vessel that's used with cold, so yatvil v'sulo tzarach, you immerse it in the mikveh, and that is sufficient. It just needs to be rinsed off, essentially. Lahagil, if it's to use boiling hot water, b'mayim roschen, with hot water, kagon klisha tashmisha b'kach. Again, it means you're talking about vessels that are normally used with hot water. Dahainu yoros ukedero shal mateches yagil, again talking things like pots, those things you're going to use boiling hot water. Over Gemara Mefarish the boy nami tvila, the Gemara is going to explain that for these tvila is also required. It doesn't need to be immersed in the mikvah. Lelabein ba'or, if you use white hot fire, kedem Mefarish v'yazal, as we go on to explain. Hashafud v'asachla, the spit and the grill, shetashmishan al yidei tzli, again there you're roasting things, so you're using it with fire, so then you're supposed to kasher it with fire. And shafa means lotsha be'evan shal nafachim, again it means that you're sharpening it on the sharpening stone. And the Gemara says, Tana was taught, V'kulan srichin tvila bar boim saw, all of the utensils mentioned in the Mishnah, they require immersion in 40 saw, they require immersion in the mikvah. And the Gemara says, Minohani Mili, from where do we know this? Amar Rava says, the Amar Kratz, because the Pasuk says, Kol davar asher yavo bo'esh, ta'viru bo'esh v'tar, anything used with fire is kashered with fire. And then it says at the end of the Pasuk, v'tar, and purified. And we learn from there, Hosef lach hakosev tahara acheres. The Pasuk is adding another purification that's referring to immersing it in the mikvah. And the Gemara continues, Tani bar kapara taught, mitoch shenemar b'mei nida, since it says in the Pasuk b'mei nida can mean sprinkling, so shomei ani, I might have understood it to mean shetzarech hazah shlishi ushvi, that it needs to be sprinkled on the third day and the seventh day, just like when you have purification from a corpse. Talmud lomar ach, the Pasuk says ach, and that's chalak, that means to make a distinction, and it means to say that it's like an exclusion. It does not require sprinkling on the third and seventh day. Imkain, if so, ma Talmud lomar b'mei nida, what does the Pasuk mean when it says b'mei nida? It means mayim shenida tovelos bohen, it means the water that a nida immerses in. Haveyomer arboim saw, that's 40 saw. 40 saw again is the measure of the amount of water in a mikvah, and so it's saying the same idea applies with the utensils. They have to be immersed in 40 saw. And the Gemara continues, Itzrich lemichta v'tahir, the Pasuk needs to write v'tahir, v'itzrich lemichta b'mei nida, and the Pasuk also needs to write b'mei nida, meaning we seem to have two psukim that are teaching the exact same thing, that utensils require immersion in the mikvah, and we need both of them, because the kasav of v'tahir, if it just said v'tahir, havamina v'tahir koldu, I would think any amount of purification, even if the mikvah did not have the requisite amount of water. So kasav rachmana b'mei nida, that's why the Pasuk says b'mei nida. V'kasav rachmana b'mei nida, and if it only said b'mei nida, havamina hariv shemesh kanida, I might think that it needs, you have to wait for the sun to go down, like by a nida. Kasav rachmana v'tar, the pasuk says v'tar la'alter, it means that as soon as it is immersed, you're able to use those utensils. And Rashi explains, Tana was taught, v'kulan, all of the utensils in the Mishnah, af hanigolim v'hamilubonim, even the ones that you're kashering with boiling hot water, even the ones that you're kashering with fire, they all need to go into the mikvah. Kol davar asher yavo ba'esh nishtamshu bo b'nei midyon al yedei ha'or, it means all of the utensils which the people of Midyon used with fire, ta'viru ba'esh, so the way you kasher is with fire. Ke'ein bolo le'isr yafli tenu, in the same way that it absorbed the isr, that's how you have to get the isr out. Kedamran, as we say, kebolo kachpoto, that's the expression, kebolo kachpoto, as it absorbs, that's how you take it out. V'tar is kro yiseiruhu, hi v'tar, this word is an extra word in the pasuk. B'mei nida yischata b'chlei Midyon ksiv, it says b'mei nida yischata, by the vessels of Midyon. And again, I might have thought b'koldu, I might have thought v'tar koldu, afilu b'mikvah chaser, even if the mikvah is missing, it doesn't have the right amount of water, and so we're saying it has to have the right amount of water. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Rav Nachman says that Rabba bar Avua says, Afilu kelim chadoshim b'mashma, even new utensils are included in this understanding, meaning to say, even if a person bought new utensils from Ovdei Kochavim, they were never used, they don't require any kashering, but still they do need to be immersed in the mikvah. And how do we know that? Yeshonim v'libnon kechadoshim damu, because if you have old utensils which you use white hot fire in order to kasher, that's the equivalent of new utensils, those are totally kosher. V'afilu achi b'itz, nevertheless they require immersion, so you see even new kalim would require immersion. The Gemara says, Ma'askif lo Rav Sheshes, Rav Sheshes asks, Ihachi, if so, Afilu zuza desarbala nami, even let's say you have scissors used to cut cloth, do those also require immersion in the mikvah? Amar Lei said to him, Klei suuda amur in beparsha, it's only vessels that are used for meals that are mentioned in the parsha, only if it's used with food, then it requires immersion in the mikvah. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba bar Avua. Rav Nachman says that Rabba bar Avua says, Lo shanu ela bilakuchin, this whole halach is only when you buy it from the Gentiles. Uchemaisa shahaya, like the incident, meaning to say like the incident in the pasuk, talking about the clay midyan. Avol she'ulin lo, but if they're borrowed, so then this halacha does not apply. And Rashi explains, Zuza desarvala misporayim, these are scissors, shegozizim bohen big date semer, again they cut the garments of wool with these scissors. The point of the Gemara was, since this whole thing is just exeris akasav, it's a decree of the pasuk, v'lo misham pilat isur, it has nothing to do with getting the isur out, it has nothing to do with kashering the utensils. Because even new vessels which have absorbed nothing require tvila, so then we should say it applies by these scissors as well. And the Gemara answered to that, Klei suda amur in beparsha, the pasuk is talking about vessels that are used for meals, for food. As it's written, Kol davar asher yavo ha'esh. It says that it's something that you use with fire. What kind of vessels are you using with fire unless you're using them with a meal? There it requires tvila. But with regards to these kinds of scissors, the tvila is not required. And the Gemara continues, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, Zavan mono de morda me Ovid Kochavim. Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, he bought a utensil of morda from an Ovid Kochavim. A utensil of morda is a utensil that's made out of a mixture of earth and dung. Savar la tvila, so he thought to immerse it. Amar le'ahume Rabbanan v'Reb Yaakov Shemei, one of the Rabbanan whose name was Reb Yaakov said to him, L'didi mefarshali mined Reb Yochanan, to me it was explained from Reb Yochanan as follows, Klei matches amur in Beparsha. The Parsha talks about klei matches, it talks about metal vessels, only those require immersion. And the Gemara continues, Amar Ravashi, Ravashi says, Hani klei zechuchis, when it comes to glass utensils. Hoel v'chin ishtabru yeshlen takana, since if they break, there's a way to fix them, you can melt them down and repair them in that fashion. So kechlei matchus, damu, they're similar to metal utensils, and they also require immersion. And the Gemara continues, kunya, with regards to kunya. Kunya is a kind of earthenware vessel that is glazed with lead. Pligi bar Ravacha v'Ravina. There we have a machlokus between Ravacha and Ravina. Chad amar ketchilasa. One says you follow what it was at the beginning. It's really earthenware, and so therefore it does not require immersion. The Chad amar kesofa. One says you follow what it is at the end. At the end you're glazing it with metal. Therefore it does require immersion. The hilchas kesofa, and the halachas we follow what it is at the end. Therefore it's considered to be like metal, and it does require immersion. And Rashi explains, Mona de Morda, again, is Adama, that's earth, Utzviye Bakar and dung, Mu'uravin, they're mixed together, V'yosin Mehan Kli, you make a vessel out of that. Klei Matchis Amurin, Le'inyan Tvila, B'chlei Ovdei Kochavim, it's talking about metal vessels over there in the Pasuk as far as immersion. T'chsev Aches HaZohav, like it mentions Zohav, which is metal, it's gold is metal. And Zechuches glass, Shenishtaber, if you have glass that broke, Roy Lahaticho, you can melt it down, V'lasoso Kli, and make it into a vessel. However, V'nishtaber Yeshlan Takona, Kechli Matchis Damos, since if they break, you can fix it. They're like metal vessels. Since again, you can melt it down similar to metal, therefore they do require immersion. And kunya tchilaso shel cheres. So kunya originally in the beginning when you're making it, in the initial stage, it's earthenware. And then they glaze it with lead. And it's used with cold water, or it's used with cold rather. And it's bought from the Ovdei Kochavim. And so there's a machlokus. One opinion is kitzchilasa, we follow what it is at the beginning. Velo boy tvila, therefore it would not require immersion, the lav matchasu, because it's not metal. And the other opinion is kisofo, it's like what it is at the end. Basar sofo azlin, and we follow the end. Shachipo matchas, you've coated it with metal. Uchli matchasu uvoy tvila, therefore it's considered like metal and it requires immersion. And the Gemara continues, Iboy lahu, they had the following question, mashkanta mai, what about collateral? Let's say the Jew takes the utensil from the non-Jew as collateral. Does that require immersion or not? Amar Mar bar Ravashi said, Abba moshchen le'ovid kochavim kasa de kasba. My father, he took as collateral from an ovid kochavim a goblet that was made out of silver, v'atbele, and he immersed it, v'ishtibe, and he drank from it. So you see that it does require immersion. But then he said, v'lo yadana, but I don't know exactly why he immersed it. Imisham de kasavar mashkanto kisvine dami. Is it because he holds that a collateral is considered like a purchase, and that's why it requires immersion? Imisham de chazi lo'ovid kochavim de daiti l'shakue. Or it might be because he saw that this particular Ovid Kochavim, his intention was to just leave him the goblet, and therefore, since he saw that was the intention of the Ovid Kochavim, that's why he immersed it. So I don't know exactly what the reason was. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Tanu Rabbon, and the rabbis taught, Halokeach klei tashmish min ovdei kochavim, if one is buying utensils from ovdei kochavim, devorim shelo nishtamish bohen, if it's utensils that were never used, matvilan vehin tahorin, just immerse them and they are pure. Devorim shenishtamish ben al yidei tzonin, let's say it was utensils that were used with cold, kegon kosos v'kitonios utzluchios, like cups and jugs and flasks, madichon umatvilan, you rinse them and you immerse them, vehem tahorin, and then they will be pure. Devorim shenishtamish ben al yidei chamin, let's say it's things that were used with hot water, kegon hayoros hakum kemuson umechame chamin, like pots, like kettles, like things that are used to heat up water, magilon umatvilan, so then you immerse them in boiling hot water and you immerse them in the mikveh vehein tahorin, and they are pure. Devarim shenishtamish ben al yidei ha'or, let's say they're things that were used with fire, kegon hashvudin v'asa achlos, like spits and grills. Melavnan, you use white hot fire, umatvilan, and then you immerse them in the mikveh. Vehein tahorin, and they are pure. V'kulan shenishtamish bu ad shelo yatvil v'shelo yagil v'shelo yilaben. And with all of these utensils, let's say you use them before you immerse them, before you use the boiling water, before you use the white hot fire. So there we have a machlokas in brises. Tani chada aser. One brisa says that the food that you prepare with such utensils is forbidden. V'tanyo idach mutter, and the other brisa says that the food that you prepare with such utensils is permitted. And the Gemara answers the contradiction in brises. Lokash, it's not difficult. Hakaman do amar nosen tam lefgam aser. One is following the opinion that if it imparts a flavor which is to its detriment, then it is forbidden. Meaning the flavor that's imparted by these vessels, because these vessels have absorbed the flavor of non-kosher, but it's nosen tam lefgam. It is not a beneficial flavor, it's a detrimental flavor, and that's a machlokas. If you hold nosen tam lefgam is aser, then the food prepared with these utensils is going to be aser, it's forbidden. And hakaman damar nosen tam lefgam mutter, and the brisa which said mutter holds nosen tam lefgam is mutter, and that's why the food is mutter. But the Gemara continues and asks, Ulaman damar nosen tam lefgam mutter, but according to the one who says that nosen tam lefgam is mutter, giulei ovde kochavim da aser rachmana, when the pasuk says that if you have utensils that have absorbed from the ovde kochavim, they've absorbed from the Gentiles the flavor of that non-kosher food, the Torah seems to say it's aser. What exactly would be the case? It's all situations of nosen tam lefgam, and there should be no problem whatsoever. You shouldn't even need to kasher such utensils. And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Chia B'rei Rav Huna says, Lo asra Torah ela kedera, the Torah itself only asers a pot. And Rashi explains, Giulei ovde kochavim dasar achmana, when the pasuk says that Giulei ovde kochavim is asur, that if you have these vessels again that have absorbed the flavor of the non-kosher food, that is asur. But Midyan, that's what it says by the vessels of Midyan, dechsiv ta'aviru ba'esh v'tar, it says that in order to purify you have to put it in fire, to boy hagola, that it requires hagola. Heichi mashkachasla, where do we find such situations where it truly requires hagola? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph.